You're listening to Rise Up, Stories of Recovery, Resilience, and Renewal with Matthew Taube.
All right, everybody, welcome to Rise Up, Stories of Recovery, Resilience, and Renewal. I'm your host, Matt Taube, and I want to thank my guest today for coming on, Jo Weatherford. Jo is calling us from Cabo, and there's a whole story behind that as well. So we're going to get right into it. Again, remember, these are always about stories of inspiration and motivation, where we were, but not really, that's not the important part. It's where we are now. We want to make sure that we kind of get that story out to everybody. So, Jo, welcome to the show, Rise Up, and I thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I really thoroughly enjoy the mission of your show to talk about the joy of recovery, because I think sometimes we get so caught in the struggle and the pain of it, we forget the point is the pleasure. And there is so much of it. And I can go back to those moments when I was trying to get sober and I didn't have a lot of examples of people that had stopped using that really, truly loved their life. What I was seeing so often was people who were literally white knuckling it. Every day was a struggle. Every moment seemed difficult. And I wasn't inspired, at all. I mean, that just seemed terrible for me, because if I was going to be miserable, I'd rather be high and miserable. I'd rather be drunk and miserable. And so thank you for doing this, because these messages, it's everything to see people that are not just surviving, but truly thriving, that are on the other side.
We want to show the people who are thriving, and we're just a small little piece of that. There are so many more people who are thriving so well, but we want to tell as many stories as possible to get that out there and show that the thriving is so much more important than that blip that we have.
Yes. And what's crazy is moving down to Cabo, right? Like, if for your listeners that haven't been here or been here recently or been here as an adult making different choices, when I always thought of Cabo, I thought of like drunk 18-year-olds and senior frauds. Like, I mean, that is, and there is a lot of that. Trust me. I mean, there's a ton of that.
You're thinking spring break.
Yeah, it's complete mayhem. And what I will say is, in my circle and so many of the people I know, they don't drink here. There's a huge amount of the population that does not drink. We all go out, we're at bars, we're at all the shows, all the things, at all the barbecues. And we just don't drink. There's a lot of people that came to Cabo and actually got sober here. So it's really kind of this cool paradox. You see right. That, the craziness, but then there's such a conscious community of people here that just choose to not put that in their body. And it's really awesome.
That's great. What a nice little switch from what it used to be. So let's go back. Let's go back in time a little. Let's get the start of your story. And I always want to remind people that when you're listening to the show, there may be some triggers that occur, so please be mindful. And hopefully we'll get through that. And Jo, let's go. Let's go back to pre-recovery. Let's see what we can dig up and get to where we are now.
Yeah, I have a pretty similar story to many people in recovery, although I'm cautious saying that, because when I was doing counseling, I was amazed at how many people would say, I didn't have any big trauma. Like, I wasn't assaulted, my parents were present. Like, I don't know why I became this. And I think it's important to remember that trauma is different for everyone, and somebody's paper cut can hurt as bad as somebody's broken leg. Like, we all have different tenderness and different resiliencies. And so, my story does include like a being molested early on, and then growing up with, a lot of drinking in the house, starting at a very early age. I mean, I was a full-blown alcoholic by the time I was 12. And it really was one of those scenarios where the first time I drank, I was like, wow, I'm home. I couldn't wait to feel that again. Even though I was violently vomiting and sick, it was like anything to get me out of this world, sign me up. I was so needing that relief. And so, first time I really drank was 12, and then that was it. I mean, I was one of those kids, and I was a kid that had the worst jungle juice concoction you could ever imagine. Just a water bottle just full of shit, you know, gin, vodka, whatever I could get my hands on. And I would go into my room and I would just slam it. I mean, there was no leading up. There was no intro, no foreplay. I went all in.
All in.
All in.
For that escape, right? For that, this is it.
Yeah. And to have that momentary relief of being out of my body and out of my mind, but out of my pain. I mean, I just came into this world needing such a deep level of attunement to feel safe and to feel like this was worth it. And I didn't have it. And I'm not even going to blame anybody on that. It was just that need was not met and I didn't know how to create it. Right. And I mean, I was one of those weird kids. I had a diary when I was 4 and I'm so sad I lost it. But I literally at 4 years old was writing, I'm always going to be sad. Like I knew that. I knew I was going to really struggle and that I was not like the others. You know, I would see these people and I would try to, you know, do what they did. And it's not to say I never felt joy. I had a lot of moments of intense, beautiful love and connection. I had the capacity for it. I just couldn't hold it. Right. And then being molested at age 4 really, I mean, that set me on a course of looking for love in very dangerous ways. A lot of really maladaptive thoughts about who I was and what made me special. I mean, it really fucked me up. Like, there's just no other way to put it. Like, it really became kind of a catalyst for disconnection in all ways, disassociation. And of course, you know, that's such a beautiful aspect of ourself. We talk about disassociation all the time like it's a terrible thing, and it's not. We have that built-in mechanism. Just like if I touch something hot and I yank my hand away, when there's something we cannot handle, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful innate survival skill. The issue with it, of course, is when we keep recreating that and we develop this belief that we can't handle painful situations. And then, of course, that is where the addiction comes in. And for me, it's like whether I am, you know, an athlete with an injury that is now hooked on Oxycontin, or I'm a 12-year-old girl with a broken heart and I'm hooked on Percocet, it doesn't matter. It's like pain is pain and it's always at the root of addiction. And we're seeking that relief. And the problem is it works until it doesn't. And there's that point of diminishing returns, but we just don't have, so many of us, the skills and the capacity to collapse time into that version of ourselves that exists outside of ourselves that can hold that level of pain, you know? And so that has been so much of my process of recovery, is learning how to do that. Right. And, you know, when you're not scared of it, it's not that you call it in or enjoy it by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like you don't go as dark and you don't stay there as long. And it's like, we are winning, you know, and we look at addiction so often as black and white. You're either doing it or you're not, you know, like with recovery. And I think we need to start taking more of a harm reduction approach with that. Like, I would have clients that were doing 8 balls of meth and like beating their wives in like crazy, awful, horrific home environments. And then all of a sudden, you know, they are smoking weed and people are still telling them, well, you're not sober and X, Y, Z. You know, and not that that wasn't still taking something from them, but the reality of it is they were living a much higher quality life. And so anybody that's listening, you may not be where you want to be yet, but I just feel really inclined to say it's important that we honor those victories as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's one of the things that we're talking a lot of conversation now around. You know, last year there was that phrase, California sober, right? Where I no longer drink, but I do this. And when there's that but there, it became but. And for a lot of people, a lot of things were kind of taken away from where we want people to be. And sober is sober, clean is clean. But like you said, harm reduction is harm reduction. You know, I've got somebody that I work with who, you know, it's great. He's in his world, he's living a great life. He only has a drink a day. Now, he's got his driver's license back. He's got a great job. He's allowed back in his family's house. For him right now, that's a win, because we're going from, a case of beer a day to a beer. Would I love him to get to 0? Sure.
Yeah.
But if this happened now, right, and that's a lot of the things and that's what we have to do, right? And that's a win, because he's no longer hurt. He's no longer struggling. He's living an amazing life right now. So
I love that.
You've gone through there. Where do you, so, you're 12, you're 13. How does your story progress?
Well, I was always super high functioning, so I always did well in school. I was an athlete, all of these things. And so I looked good on paper, which was historically the way I did life. And, I was pretty and I was good at making people believe I was okay. I had developed those skills very early on. I knew how to show up to make people not worry about me. And so it was interesting. I was able to go, I did end up going to a private boarding school in Scottsdale, which was phenomenal, and I loved it. And I really thrived there. I was still using a lot, but again, still able. I graduated second in my class. I had full ride academic scholarships. I was going to go to Grand Canyon University in Arizona, but my parents decided to move to Reno, and I graduated when I was 16. So they were like, "You're coming with us. No way. We're legally responsible for you still, and we don't trust you," which was very smart. So you need to come with us, and then you can go back to Arizona. And what happened is I didn't. I got a job selling and buying the clothes at a high-end country club. And I just fell in love with the area. So I stayed in Reno. And again, it was one of those, looked so good on paper, but very, very dark. A lot of interpersonal conflict. Whoever my romantic relationship was at the time, really that individual is going to get the majority of my suffering. So, I made it through. I graduated. I lived in LA. I did the whole Hollywood thing. It was really, really difficult for me there to sustain, because all of a sudden it was like applauded, Coke and drinking and all of it. Like everybody was doing it. So I didn't have that, I guess, the bar was so low on my behavior. And so I really spiraled, and then wound up in rehab. I left LA and came back to Reno, and that's when I started graduate school.
How old were you?
So I was 24. And again, I was just leaving this really crazy, chaotic life. I mean, at the time I was dating one of the Chargers and modeling full time, just getting paid ridiculous amount of money, encouraged to use so many drugs. And because that's just what everybody was doing. So,
right.
I really lost myself, horrible depression. I mean, and it was crazy because if I can just illuminate this snapshot of time, I'm in this beautiful condo in Newport Beach. Again, I've got this NFL player, football, player boyfriend. I've got, a magazine coming out. I had just shot for FHM. Like everything on paper should have been like, whoa, your life is incredible. And I have never hated myself more than that time,
Wow.
So it was like, oh, you're in a magazine. Yeah, your body image issues are worse than they've ever been. Oh, you've got this guy in your life that, people would say is this incredible person, and that means something about you. And the reality is I have no idea what he was doing with me. I was an absolute mess,
Right.
So none of this stuff added up. And I would wake up on the floor in my kitchen and I wouldn't know what day it was. And I would have shoots lined up across the country and I'd be missing flights. I mean, it was terrible. It was so bad. And so the suicidal ideation that I felt all the time was unrelenting.
Mhm.
And I mean, God bless my mom. There would be times I'd call her at like 2 a.m, like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through the night. And she would show up. And that was how I did it until finally I was like, I have to go to rehab. And a part of me knew I wasn't going to get sober, but I knew I needed to give myself enough time.
Right.
So that I didn't commit suicide. I mean, genuinely, I at least had enough awareness for that. So I went to one of those bougie ass, like $100,000 treatment centers where you just get massages on the beach. And God bless them. They really, they tried. But the thing that pisses me off about a lot of these places is highly recommend the documentary, The Business of Recovery. Because a lot of these places charge an astronomical amount of money for AA. And that's the majority of the content and curriculum, which is supposed to be free, and it's interesting. And the people are not qualified so often to be running these programs. Anyway, it was a mess. And I actually had somebody there help me recall my molestation when I was 4. And it was a male therapist, and we were exceptionally close. It was the first time I had discovered this. I had truly repressed that memory fully and completely until we started doing therapy together. And so if you're a marriage and family therapist, the ethical code is that you need to wait 2 years before you engage in any kind of sexual or romantic relationship with a former client. So this asshole waited literally 2 years to the day. And we had stayed in contact, and then he hit on me. And I'm not blaming him because I was truly going to relapse no matter what. But I had been sober for about 1.5 years. And it just wrecked me. It just, all of my deep insecurities that's the only, like, my sexuality is the only thing that makes me worth loving. And what happens if that goes away? And I mean, just men aren't safe. Like this deep, awful distrust, like vulnerability. This is what I get. It was so unbelievable, that process. So that was my first treatment experience, really. And so I didn't seek help again. And it's so important we find people that are good, and safe. And it's so important, if you are a therapist listening to this, that it's never okay. Whenever that power differential exists, whether it's in therapy or a business or whatever, it's like, it just isn't. You can't ever undo what was established.
Right.
It's so important. So anyway, I'm not going to go on too much of a tangent. Needless to say, I relapsed, and it was a full-blown relapse. It was not a slip. It was like, again, I'm all in. And for me, it was always drinking. Even hard drugs, I could quit pretty easily. Alcohol is, oh my God, it's my kryptonite. It just destroys me. And I heard this analogy of alcohol, and it's my favorite one, and it so explains my situation. So if you think about like doTERRA oils or essential oils and the process of making them, right? The alchemy of making them. What do you use to extract the essence out of the plants? You use alcohol. And so for me, I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but for me, putting alcohol into my system extracted the essence out of me. And literally, it was almost like this dark energy came in. It was like my shadow just got to run rampant. And there was no essence. There was no self. There was no love. There was no part of me left in this body. And I mean, to say I was in a blackout is just such an understatement. I mean, it was every time I drank, coming to the next morning, it was like the worst amnesia. I mean, I roofied myself nightly.
Right.
And so
you essentially were going to a blackout drunk.
Yes.
Right. Which people don't often, they don't realize what that really means.
Yeah.
It literally is like reading a legal document or a government document that's been redacted, and there's like a whole evening of your life that's been redacted, and you cannot see it.
And you might get little bits and scattered speckled pieces of it, and then there's that feeling of shame. Like you fucked up, right? You did something terrible, but you don't even remember what. Yeah. So
or the fear, or just you normally fucked up. And oh my God, what happened? There's that like, so okay, I don't remember it. So there's a reason I don't remember this, because I know what I've done in the past when I do remember. Like there's the whole mixed bag of like shame and fear, and like there's that pit. And
Yes.
everybody who's on recovery, there's that sinking feeling of like waking up late for work, but multiply that by about 1,000,000. That like awful pit in the stomach of being a blackout.
Yes.
So, sorry, I wanted to give people an idea of what that really like. When we think of blackout drunk, I was one, and I know my friends say that they were. I'm like, you weren't. If you remember all the things I did last night, you were not a blackout.
Well, and it's just so unfortunate that blackout doesn't mean lay down. You know,
So,
it's like you're
I apologize for jumping in.
talking, interacting, and I mean, I think it's important to also say it's like you're still fully and completely responsible for yourself in those moments. This is by no means, an excuse. Like if I'm drinking and driving and I hit someone, I'm still 100% responsible for my actions, right? We'd never be like, oh, sorry, I was in a blackout, or the horrible shit I said to you. Oh, I was in a blackout. It's just important that people understand that it really is, it is that, and it's interesting though for me because the idea that this shame is created in those moments, even if we don't remember that, so we do feel that. And there's such a separation of self. It's interesting, even the word integrity, right? We think there's like a moral connotation to that. But for me, when I hear the word integrity, it means integrating all of my pieces, right? And so when we're doing stuff in a blackout that is so out of alignment with our truth, it really causes this fracturing of self, And so it's like, it's not even just the cognitive dissonance of this is who I want to be and this is who I am. There is an element of that, of our perception of identity and our desired identity. But the reality is we're doing stuff that we truly wouldn't normally do. And I mean, talk about psychosis at the highest level, or we think about something like DID, dissociative identity disorder or multiple personality disorder. And we go, oh my God, that's the worst thing that could happen is this psychosis. And it's like, we're living it.
Right.
And then you're already, what caused the addiction, what initiated it, right, is still there. And then yet you've scattered into 1,000,000 pieces, and it's really sad. And the splitting is so much of what feeds this addiction. And it really was there before. We talk about that black and white thinking. We were talking about it in the beginning of the podcast. Oh, I have to be 100% sober or I'm a loser. Like we do that so much in life where things are either or instead of both and we don't learn that critical skill of like capacity to hold all of it, our light, our dark, our apology, our hopes, our dreams, our truth of what is, our forgiveness. There's so many aspects, and especially for those of us that developed addiction early in adolescence, it's just a mind fuck. I mean, it's like you're trying to make sense of the most chaotic and crazy experience, and being human is already very, very difficult for so many of us. Even the people that are good at it, they just naturally come into this world and they just seem to like understand, and you're like, whoa, that's cool. But like, I wasn't one of those. And then
Definitely did not get the manual.
God, right? Not at all.
So you're here. So you're saying to you, I know when you left LA, you went to Reno, you're doing your grad program, you've relapsed. Where are we now? Did you graduate yet?
I had not graduated yet. So you want to talk about like a horrible, you're trying to hold all of it. Here I am trying to work in the addiction field, and my own is flaring up, so there was so much intense fear, and I really had a deep desire to help people. And I knew, I knew my truth. I knew what had happened. And it was weird because I was able to maintain it for a while, even enough to myself to lie and pretend like, oh, I have it pretty manageable, which I guess for me, in comparison to what it was before, I did. Like, I wasn't depressed, I wasn't suicidal, I wasn't drinking and driving, I wasn't doing those things.
Right.
But the reality was I was drinking, and I am not somebody that should be doing that. So I knew I was living a lie. And that also encouraged more drinking. And it was weird because at the time, I had a lot of emotional stuff going on, but there was also this weird desire. Like, I just wanted to be what I considered normal. I just wanted to be able to go on a date and meet somebody new and have a beer. Like, it was such an intense desire for that I compromised everything I knew just to feel that for a little while. And it's interesting now. And I mean, I just had my 40th birthday, and thank God, I think we naturally kind of age out of that at some point. Nobody bothers me now. Like, when I go to a party and I ask for water, people are like, good for you. You know, like nobody's. And if they do ask, it's a genuine curiosity. Like, you don't drink at all? No, I don't. But it doesn't come up, you know? And I think that speaks to who I am and who I hang out with. And it's also because I don't hold the energy around it. Like, if I was still somebody that was concerned about that, it would be happening all the time, because we don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. So if I feel, you know, uncomfortable about the fact that I don't drink, I'm going to attract those experiences that, you know, you're uncomfortable about not drinking, so now everybody's going to ask you about it. Where now it just doesn't happen. It's
definitely a level of comfortableness, and you have that. You carry it differently when you're comfortable with what you're not doing.
Yes.
You know, it's not even a question, right? And okay, with new people to say, like, you don't drink at all. And we have those. I do have those reflex, you know, answers of like, well, you know, let's say I used to drink it all.
Right.
So,
yeah.
You also don't want to go in. This is, I think, my own little thing of bringing in, you know, remember the SNL character, Debbie Downer. It's like, well, you know, I used to be a blackout drunk. You know, it's like putting down the whole party. Just like, you know, I used to drink it all. Trust me. I'm like, but and I would say to people every once in a while, I'll be like, I don't shame them. Like, but if I could drink, I certainly would be happy with that is. Like, you know, like all these new peppermint twisted, but I'm like, I just drank. So it's definitely, you carry it differently, and the conversations are different. And I would even say at the very beginning, when I got sober, I was actually at a dinner party, and I'll never forget it, where it was that, not that I was uncomfortable. I was fresh out of rehab, so I did know this thing was coming up. I remember talking about it in rehab and discussing, what do I do? Like, we had actually practiced it. And the conversation was, well, you know, Matt, do you want to drink? No, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You should, like, nothing? No, I'm good. Just have one. I'm good. What's the big deal? Like, listen. And I would try, like, listen, I'm a trainer. Look at what, you know, my body is what I do. I tried everything till finally somebody came out and said, what, are you an alcoholic? I went, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, and I looked around the room, and it did, like, the whole room crashed, and it was like, I said, I've spent 10 minutes trying to avoid what just happened.
Right.
Right. I said, none of you took any cues. I go, think about if I was a different person a month ago, just struggling to stay sober, and all of you just hammering at me.
Yeah.
I was like, I would have 100%, like, no problem, and kept on drinking.
Right.
It was amazing. That was, again, my own thing dealing with that. But it was funny how now it's like, no, I'm good, thanks. And nobody even goes there anymore. Most people also know, and like my circle, obviously. But yeah, it's crazy. But it's also because my wife does drink. You know, she'll have a glass of wine. She had barely, but she'll have a glass of wine, and I'm okay with it because it's not right. I used to joke around. I'm like, I really wish for my own, you know, escapism, I wish I licked the back of frogs or something. I'd much rather have a beer. Like, you know, so that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's, you know, we escaped. Like, I drank for escape. I had to forget. I needed that blackout there to kind of repress and forget everything that was going on. So we got through this. So you're working in the addiction field as a grad student. You're drinking.
it inevitably caught up to what it was, what I was, which was out of control. And I can't even go into exactly what happened, but I had a relationship fall apart. And I say fall apart, but I mean, I was so unstable. Like, I dumped deep fried turkey grease over everything this individual owns. Like, I was that level crazy. I mean, and he's like, you're supposed to be a therapist. You help people manage their emotions, and you just dumped an 18-gallon vat of deep fried turkey grease over everything I own. And I'm like, yes, I understand. But it's like, those who can't do teach. And right. It's true. Most of the people that you're going to for your mental health counseling, there's a reason we went into that field. We try to understand ourselves and our fucked up families. And, it's like this. It's so easy to put these people on pedestals, but it's like, man, and I love the humanness of people. I think it's great. Right. And it's like, for me, I always find that more attractive. The people that do it wrong and then correct is way sexier to me than the people that just kind of play it safe and skate through. But anyway, mine got really bad. I was the turning point for me, though, and I'm going to share this, and it does include another sexual assault. So just to state that before I say what I'm going to say, I was dating another professional athlete. It makes me sound like such a pro-ho, but it was so interesting because for me, I had no sense of self. So I would date these people that were attractive to society, and they were, and some of them were wonderful people too. So I don't want to sound like I'm slamming them, but the fact that they were with me makes me very concerned for their character. But so again, it was like, oh, well, if I'm dating a dude that plays for the Yankees, I must be special, right? Because I don't feel special. So now I have this thing that will make me special. And so I was in Tampa for spring training. Me and him got in a fight. I was at a nightclub. I find this dude at the other VIP table. I'm trying to make this guy jealous. We exchange numbers, and then we get in a huge fight. So I'm going to fly out the next day unexpectedly. And I text the guy that I had met at a nightclub, not realizing this was an Israeli arms dealer, like a really bad dude. And what was crazy about it was I wasn't wasted when he showed up for dinner, which is strange. Like, I go, wow, I can't even remember my thought process that day, but I was sober when he showed up, which was very strange. I didn't have any intention of hooking up with him. I just didn't want to waste a night. And I don't think I wanted to be alone, if that makes sense. It was like the end of my trip. That was my thought process, was that immature. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't waste a night. That FOMO, whatever, right? So this individual meets me at dinner, and I saw the security footage later. I mean, he had roofied me. I had 2 glasses of wine. And next thing I know, I'm being carried up to my room, and I woke up in a bathtub, sheets stripped. Every message had been deleted from my phone. I decided to not press charges because I had a very, very intuitive hit that this was a very dangerous person. And I just was not willing to go through that. And I just wanted to get home. So what's interesting about that moment is, as horrific as it was, and it truly was, it was the first time in my entire life I felt compassion for myself. Now, had I been drunk and that had happened to me, I would still have felt compassion. 100%. It's not because I didn't drink and I was raped. I felt compassion. I want to be very clear on that. You should be able to do whatever you want and get as blasted as you want. Nothing should ever happen to you. So please don't cross wires on those two statements. And what I will say is I had never felt sad for myself before. And then I went to rehab and actually got sober. So this horrific, the most violent, the most excruciatingly painful moment became the catalyst for me to take care of myself. And if you have been assaulted and you have not yet, and I do mean yet, felt that compassion, stay with yourself because you deserve it, and truth is always true. And eventually you will catch up into that. There is no way you will go into the next stage of existence without having experienced that self-love. It will happen for you. It may take longer than we like, but you will feel it. And for me, I don't know why I was able to, but when I felt that compassion for myself, that is what helped me get sober. And so that was over 10 years ago. I went to treatment, and, my life has been a journey since, at learning to do life without numbing out all the time. It has been tricky, and there have been places I have slipped up. I never drank again, but I have certainly, I found myself popping sleep meds and doing shit that's messy, squirrely energy, and it wasn't in alignment, but I give myself the grace to say I've done the best I can. And when I look at my life now and what I have created and the amount of love I feel for myself and my partner and others, my family, there is no joy greater than what I experience on a daily basis. And I fought real fucking hard to get here, and I'm not special. If I can do this, anyone can do this, because I have been in those darkest places, and people look at me all the time and they're like, oh, what did she go through? And it's like, no, I've been in mental institutions. I was in San Francisco in a lockdown psych facility. It doesn't get any more insane than that moment, and I belonged there. And that was a hard realization. Like, oh, no, I belong here. I've been in jail. I've been to all of those places. And when you look at my life now and you see me, even now I'm going through a divorce. Like, it's crazy. I'm going through one of the most painful, treacherous things. And yeah, it was excruciating for a few months, and now it's not, but I always let myself go into the depths of despair, and it's 90 seconds. When you allow the full expression of an emotion to come, it is a 90-second wave you ride, and then it passes, and you may have to ride it repeatedly. But the second we allow ourselves to fully feel and let go, it gets better. It just does. Where we screw up is by, ooh, I can't handle that. Oh, I don't feel that. No, let yourself. I mean, literally, like, I live in Mexico. I have a partner that has been a dear friend of mine for over a decade, and we reconnected in the most beautiful way. It's like this magical love that I've never felt so seen and honored, coming out of what I just went through. It's like, I don't know. It's so important for me. If I can say anything, it's like the universe does have your back. Yeah. And it doesn't feel like it, but the second we start going, oh, I'm a victim, everybody's out to get me, all that shit, you are what you think you are. So all of a sudden, if your cue card to the universe says, I am a victim and people take advantage of me and nothing goes my way, then the universe meets you with a cue card that says yes to all of that. People are going to treat you like shit. You're never going to get your way, blah, blah, blah. It's like, we cannot control our lives, and thank God, right? I mean, it's a video game that you're going to pass every level. What fun would that be? It is, the challenges and our creativity and our resilience that makes it fun, right? In the end, not when we're in the middle of it.
Right.
It's like, we just have to know that we are so in control of the lens through which we see the world. That is your responsibility. And I say this lovingly, you're not responsible for the trauma that's occurred, but you are responsible for healing it because you deserve it, and we need to be in that empowered state. And
we're not. So you said it really well. It gets better, right?
Yeah.
And what we're living in, and I look back at, those periods where I blacked out. Now, when I get those blackouts, I was a professional drinker, right? Mm-hmm. So the blackouts came, but that's only because I was drinking all day. Like, I was suppressing all day, and then it got bad, right? And that's where it became that whole, okay, we got to get out of this. I knew it was there. I know that, like, when I hit my bottom, that's what it was. I'm done, right? I had to feel the compassion. I remember going to rehab like you and seeing, I definitely, at first, I didn't want to be there, but I definitely had to acknowledge that I belonged there.
Right.
Right. Like, and that's what, we often don't see it as people who are in recovery. We see it as this is what we have to go through this stuff, right? Like this is part of the process. And then the ones who do really, really well and succeed with it are the ones who understand that that was part of the journey. That was part of the process. We had our big T, little t, we had our traumas, but then we acknowledge the trauma. And I guess part of it as well, we have to acknowledge it to know it's there. Right? We just don't kind of like, my traumas I drank away, but I had to face them head on and deal with them, and maybe not necessarily deal with the people that was involved with them, but me, because it's me. At the end of the day, it's I go to bed. I could be coached, I could be mentored, I could be in therapy, but at the end of the day, none of those people are in bed with me.
Right.
It's me, dark room, and my thoughts. And It was understanding they were there and making sure that that's where we get to go afterwards, right? When that recovery comes, with that resilience. And I got to tell you, everybody, whether you've gone through addiction or not, is resilient in what we do, right? Everybody has their own level of rock bottom. Everybody has their own level of, shit they can't handle, right? And what, like you said, a stub toe or a paper cut could be the same to one person that, shattering their femur is to somebody else.
It's
still the same, right? It's, I remember during the pandemic, we were talking about it. People would always say like, it's not like, the kids not going to school. It's not like, the Blitz and, Germans bombing London.
right.
But to these kids, they didn't know any different. All of a sudden their life was ripped out from underneath them. And that would be a trauma, right? Like they're no longer going to school. They're no longer seeing that. So it's, again, what we threw on people is, it's not like, we're at World War, but to these kids who have had everything, I'm hungry. 30 minutes later, something, your favorite restaurant's at your doorstep.
Yeah.
Right. So having it's a silly kind of comparison, but at the same time, it's we have these moments where we don't realize that what might be small to us is huge for somebody else.
Well, and I really love what you're saying, and it makes me think about this differently. So sometimes the gift is in the tragedy, meaning the bigger, the more explosive, the more terrible the issue, the more we find ourselves in it. And the more the healing becomes possible. Like, if I hadn't been such a horrible alcoholic, I would have never gotten sober. You know what I mean? Like, I would have just been able to skate through life, and I would have been like so many people I know, which is they're not really happy, but they're making it work, and they can't wait to come home, and they have 3 or 4 glasses of wine or drinks or whatever, or every night is cocktail hour. And, they want to remove themselves, but it's not bad enough to actually do something. Mm-hmm. That to me is a special kind of hell. It really is. I actually prefer, give me jail institutions and wanting to die so that I get off my ass and do something. It's
like Groundhog Day.
Yes.
It's like they're repeating the same thing over and over, and it's not getting any better, but I'm going to keep on doing it.
That's despair. And I prefer terror over despair. So like for me, I would prefer the German invasion over, whoa, what the hell is happening? I got to sit here in my, you know what I mean? Like, I do better. And maybe this is part of that alcoholic tendency I have. I thrive in chaos. I invite it. It's one of the things that I have to work on all the time.
We're a special kind of people. I will say that everybody I've spoken to, it is the exact same. We got used to thriving in chaos because from a young age, for most of us, and it was a young age, chaos was thrown onto us.
Yes.
And usually from somebody older than us, and it's at that level of the chaos, we just don't know any better. Right. And that just becomes our world, and chaos is there. And that's just how we function and how we move. And, I can work really well in chaos. I remember when I first got sober, my best friend who is in rehab therapy as well, I decided to throw my wife a surprise party. And he calls me up. He says, "How much fun are you having?" I'm like, "I'm loving this." He's like, "Don't you? You're loving," he goes, he goes, "your personality. You're an addict. Are you loving throwing the party, or are you loving the sneaking around, hiding things?" You created chaos that only you get to experience.
Yes.
To throw what everybody else sees as a birthday party, but to me knowing you, because he was an addict as well, he goes, me knowing who we are, that is chaos that lights us up.
Yes.
It's all the pleasure centers, and like,
yes.
We're so used to it that chaos just works. It took me about 10 years to find a way to do a to-do list.
Right.
For me. But it's funny, if you look at it, it's a little chaotic.
Well, and that's it. I'll do anything to avoid boredom. And so that is one of the biggest things in recovery, that I've had to pay attention to. Because it's like, ooh, what shit am I stirring up? Just so I can avoid being bored. And, all the mindfulness training and everything that I've done has been so critical, like learning to sit still and be with what is before. I remember the first AA meeting I walked into. I'm like, you guys read this shit every day, the same thing? I was like, oh no, oh hell no. This is a hard no for me, because I need to be constantly stimulated. And what a problem that is, right? Because those desperate attempts to feel something, can get into trouble. And so, learning to love stillness is a rewiring.
I have yet to find an addict who does not suffer ADHD.
Yeah.
I have yet to meet an addict who does not have ADHD.
Oh, God, I know. It's so interesting. We are all so similar in so many ways, and our stories may be different, but I love that common thread. I remember when I was in graduate school and I was reading the DSM, the diagnostic manual for all these different conditions. And, it's so interesting because, I can't draw your blood and tell you you're bipolar. These things, I'm not saying they're not real. They are real expressions of ways in which we respond to stress. And under enough stress, any of us are going to have a little bit of that. But it's been this fun kind of dance of, oh my God, this is so textbook, the way that I'm acting, thinking, responding to the world. Of course this happened, to wanting to be special and unique. And then you're mad that it's so textbook, but it's cool because you feel that interconnectedness to all of us at that moment. And, that for me is there's so much shame and stigma around addiction. And I'm anybody that has that capacity to do anything at that level, I'm you're interesting. I want to get to know you.
Right.
You
are very
interesting. Cool shit to tell me.
Yeah, there were very interesting. I can say when I was in rehab, we'd do lunch together in our group, and I'd be now I will say for the first 4 or 5 days, I didn't say a word, which is very uncommon to me. Didn't say a word. Everybody else talked, and I would just listen and thinking these are really, because I went in thinking oh my God, I'm going to rehab, and all the losers, and I'm these are really interesting people.
Absolutely.
It's you really, and then I would start going to different tables at lunch. I'm I gotta meet those people over there. I gotta meet those people over there.
Yes.
It's a crazy, literally, a better word. It's a crazy room full of people with all these little intricacies, and getting to know them, and it was really eye opening. It was eye opening for a bunch of reasons. So let's get out of this part. Let's go into you had your sexual, so you had been raped, and then you went to rehab, and it stuck.
Yeah, I never wanted to drink again. I did aversion therapy. So I literally rewired my brain and never wanted to drink again, which is such a gift. I still, to this day, people drink around me all the time. Thankfully, my ex-husband wasn't a big drinker and my partner now isn't, because I am still so turned off by the smell of alcohol. I literally couldn't be in an intimate relationship with somebody that drank frequently because I'd just be nauseous all the time.
Yeah,
so the aversion for me really worked. And I was one of those people, see, I was so ready to go to rehab. I prayed every day for something to fucking work. And I mean, I literally was on my hands and knees every night. Please, please change my life. You know,
Right.
give me something. I will do anything. Because I knew how sick I was and I knew how much I hated myself. And I knew that there was a version of me that existed in the future that didn't. And I didn't know how to meet her. I couldn't find her. I was so lost. I tried everything. I would sit in these little rooms and talk about my feelings. And it just made it worse because I was like, reliving this stuff, but not really witnessing myself with love and compassion. So I'm sitting there re-traumatizing myself and it felt hopeless. And, you know, you think about like why so many people kill themselves when they go on antidepressants. And I could go off on pharma. I won't. If anybody wants to know my thoughts and beliefs or wants resources, you can hit me up directly. And what I will say is, when you tell somebody take this pill and it's going to make you better and it doesn't, and it's their last hope, you are really doing a disservice because, you know, you can't selective numb. And so we do this with drugs and alcohol all the time, but we forget like it's our joy. It's our, all of it, you know, gets dimmed. And so you have somebody already hanging on a thread and then you tell them this is going to help. And then they're just numb. It's like, it's such a hell to be in. And, you know, when I got sober and I started doing actual therapy and I met a man that was phenomenal and he was a therapist that helped me and he was so safe. He knew my issues and just this divine embodied masculine showed up and helped me forgive, you know, by being in such integrity and grace with all of it. And so safe, never crossed any boundaries, any lines, you know, and it changed to me. He's one of the reasons I'm able to love the way that I do. Right. And so it's important that we all be that for one another. Be that safe person, you know, be that person that shows up, be that person that gives grace, you know, like I literally have the capacity for unconditional love at this stage in my life. You know, that doesn't mean that I'm going to stay in a relationship with somebody if it no longer serves me or if it's dangerous to me or if my boundaries are being violated. But I do have the capacity to bestow that unconditional love. And so knowing that I have been given that, you know, and I give it to myself. Honestly, I am at that point where it's like, thankfully, I don't do things out of alignment very often. Although I will tell you, having been in so many oppressive situations for so long and silencing myself and keeping quiet and going along, it really has exploded a few times recently where I'm like, oh shit, I'm actually glad to know I still have that in me. But that is such an important balance, and men and women do it. I see it a lot more in women. Horrific throat issues, so many problems with the thyroid. It's keeping quiet, keeping quiet, keeping quiet. It's like there has to be a way that we assert ourselves. We set real high standards. I mean, my theme for 2023 is I don't fucking compromise in any quadrant period ever again. I don't. I'm not going to, not with my health, not with my love, not with my romantic relationships, not with my friends. And this is going to sound a little narcissistic, but it's not designed to. And I hold that awareness, but it's like, if you don't have value, you're not in my circle. You're not. Like my people add value.
If you're not being, I teach my kids all the time, if you're with people who aren't lifting you up, then they are pushing you down.
It's true.
And it's such a big thing to remember for so many people that, you know, we self-love, that's a big thing, you know, self-love. You have to protect yourself. I have a friend of mine who she would always say she had a positivity circle around her. And if you were allowed in that circle, it wasn't like a snobbish thing. It wasn't an arrogance thing. It was just, I'm going to protect myself and my people. So everybody in this circle gets my protection.
Yes.
Right? And it's funny, I have a friend of mine, and It's really funny when you look, the things we would notice. We were once out with his family, my family, the kids, and we were out for ice cream. And just a small little thing that sticks out in my mind, I had my back this way, and he was standing over here. My wife was over here, and the kids. And I didn't notice a very strange-looking man and very strange in general walking towards us because my back was to him. And my buddy who was sitting stood up and over here, can I help you? And he was protecting everybody and lifting everybody. It was like, I got it. I'm like, whoa. And then another situation happened just a few months ago where something similar came up, and it was me who reacted. It was like, wow, you don't realize that powerful circle that we've got of I'm here for you, even though that had nothing to do with me.
Yes.
So you were at odds. I'm gonna help lift you up, and I'm gonna be part of this.
Yeah,
and that's something that we I think the empathy I find, despite the fact that we joke about our ADHD and we like the chaos, I also find we're also very empathetic. People who go through recovery, we always are, right? We kind of feel other people's pain and we feel their sadness. We also feel their happiness. So making sure we're surrounded by people who lift us up, and it's not a narcissistic thing saying that you're only surrounding yourself with people who give you something. What you're getting is that you want to be given positivity. You want to be given uplifting. You want to be given that this is a group of people that you can hands down trust with your life.
And fall apart with safely, because they're going to remind you of the truth. They're not going to meet you in your despair and anguish and your lack of faith. They're going to hold the light. They're going to hold the truth. They're going to allow those painful emotions, and we know where we are headed. Always and all times. It's very important who we allow witness our pain with us, because that is the difference between trauma and healing. Pain that is not appropriately witnessed becomes trauma. Pain that is appropriately witnessed, when we are surrounded with compassion and people who have the capacity to go through those steps and love us, that is how we heal. And so people add value in so many ways. Sometimes it's their art. Sometimes it's their resilience. Sometimes it is their protective nature. Sometimes it is their faith. Sometimes it is that they have done and gone where we are headed, and they hold codes that activate that possibility and potential within us. Some people add value with their humor and their laughter. Some people do it with their joy, and some people do it in their ability to go into the dark, So when I say add value, it's just those very, very, very clear boundaries and high standards that I hold for myself and others are what allow me to be my most authentic expression, and that to me at this stage of my life is more important than anything,
I love it.
It's so critical. I protect myself fiercely with the group that I surround myself with so that I don't have to have boundaries with them. I don't need to do that. I get to be so free.
You get to be you.
They deserve it.
Right. Well, that's part of it. They get to see you for who you are. You're not holding back. They get to experience Joe. They get to experience who you really are. That's huge. So with all that we're saying here, all we've been through, and all the last 10 minutes we've been talking, it's been amazing. You can see you're definitely somebody different than when you were 10 years ago or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? So you picked up, you got to Cabo, like that in itself, like we talked about in the beginning, that's spring break territory. But that's also, and I've seen your pictures, I've seen your stories, I've seen your reels, I've seen all your images, and it's like you're living in paradise. You're living such an amazing life, but you can look at, like you said, what you're seeing, and they're all poses, they're all images for the gram and all that stuff, but they're authentic.
Yeah.
That's, you know what I mean? So where were you, and what prompted you to pick up, which is a lot of people are doing this now. They're picking up and they're going, you know what? I'm going to live my life in where I want to live it on my terms. We only have one of these. So I want to do it my way. So,
and it's really, I'm going to say something, there's no excuse, and you can say, oh, well, this privilege or that or blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, there are people that are down here with me They had no money, they had kids, they had whatever, right? And they made it work. So whatever dream you want to pursue, just know you have full permission to. You can always make it work. Now, for me, I was very fortunate. I had been teaching at the university for 12 years. My ex-husband and I had a successful martial arts school. He was brilliant and had created this magnificent business. And so somebody wanted to buy it. We had owned the buildings. We were able to sell that. We were in a position where we could really just come and relax for a little while. And after running a business through COVID and, just a lot like life stuff, we were ready to sit back and relax for a little bit. But I'll tell you, I would have moved everything online and moved here anyway, no matter what. I was ready to be near the ocean, and I had been to Cabo once before in my life, and I hated it in 2009. So it made no sense, but I knew I needed to be here. So I am exceptionally intuitive. I have healed my gut. I tap into my innate wisdom. I listen. I ask for guidance and I receive it. And then I act on it, which strengthens that communication. So I knew we were supposed to live in Cabo, and thank God my ex-partner was rad. It was like, okay, and really was down for the journey with me. And I'm so thankful for him, even though it all went to shit, like really has blown up terribly. He was all in, and I'm so grateful for him. I'm so grateful I didn't have to do this by myself. So, so much appreciation for him. But we sold everything. We bought a house here after one day. The second we were flying in, I'm like, this is it. And I just felt it. I knew it. Cabo is a very, very high conscious community of exceptional people. And we all did the same thing. We all said, nope, we're done with that. That narrative, that story, that way of doing things, this old shit. No, I don't choose it anymore. I don't like it. Thank you, COVID. Honestly, like so much love to anybody who lost someone, so much love to you. And for me, it was the catalyst that broke me free from years of conditioning that no longer served me. And so we moved down here. I instantaneously, my community here, like we roll like 100 deep. It's so wide. It's so vast of dreamers, of artists, of creatives, of people who love, of people who believe, of people who help one another. I'm in the grocery store, and if I look confused off 10 people, what do you need? Like standing in line at the immigration office, like all my neighbors know one another. We watch each other's homes when somebody's gone. Like it's unbelievable. It is what you believe an advanced cooperative society looks like. That's what we have here. And it's very special. I'm so thankful. Like I feel so honored and so blessed to have been invited into this place. The local people here are so welcoming and they're so lovely and they get it. They prioritize family over stuff and they just are so magnificent, and wonderful. And every single day I get to get up and I live on the beach. I look over my infinity pool and I see the ocean and I go, Jesus Christ, I'm the luckiest person I know. And because I allow myself to feel so humbly the magnificence of the life that I have created, I attracted more and more and more. And I don't have to worry I'm going to lose it. I don't have to worry I don't deserve it, any of it, because I show up and I do everything that I can to bestow these gifts onto other people and pay it forward. And I love people and I genuinely believe in people. And when I say that no matter what, healing is always possible, I know it because I am it. I am a living, breathing example that anyone can live the life that they want. I'm sitting here, my partner flies in. It's the first time he's ever been to Cabo. I am not making this up. We get on, we're overlooking the ocean. From my house, these whales start breaching. It's like, it's something out of a movie, And it's just like, oh my God. And then that evening, there's this awesome resort right next to me that launches fireworks. So then there's like all these fireworks. And then we're going to throw this huge, amazing music festival. So then we're on this like $20 million yacht just hanging out. And he's like, holy shit, this is your life. I'm like, yeah, this is Tuesday. I don't even know what to tell you.
This is Tuesday.
That's what we do. You know, and it's not hard and it's not struggle. And everybody shows up in love. And again, I'm not bragging and I'm kind of bragging because it's true. It can happen for you.
Well, you made it happen. You made it happen. We got to remember there, and that's why we do the podcast. We see what we have now, and people don't see that there was this shit before.
Yes,
the shit didn't diffuse, right? Oh yeah, horrible shit that didn't define it. But it's almost like in order to get to the view of the infinity pool, you're standing. You had to pile up all that shit, stand on top of it, and now you get the infinity view pool.
And I did, and I fought so hard for myself, and I'm so blessed because I have so many people that showed up for me, and that's where I am so, so happy to pay it forward in any way that I can and be that example. And I'll tell you, there was a point in my life where I would have heard me speaking now, I'd have been like, oh God, fuck her. Who is she? Who does she think she is? Oh my God. And I would have been so appalled. And that was my own lack of belief in myself being projected and mirrored back to me.
Yep.
Right. So when I see people that are leaps and bounds ahead of me, and there's so many people around me all the time that are leaps and bounds ahead of me, spiritually, emotionally, financially, all of it. Right. I look at them and I go, thank you. I don't get jealous. I don't feel that. I feel inspired. Let people that are doing what you want to do inspire you, because the second you go, ugh, right, and we close off, we miss the magic. And we tell ourselves that we suck, that we're not enough, whatever. It does not matter what stage of life you are in right now. You might have just gotten out of jail. You may have just decided you might want to get sober. You might have been sober for 20 years and you've been in a shit marriage and you hate your life. It doesn't matter. You may be, I'm living my dream. It doesn't matter where you're at. What matters is where you're going and where you believe you have the capacity to go. My whole jam now is stretching my capacity to hold joy. It is to make it wider and bigger and freer. And I'm going to say something, and some of you guys are going to get it. Some of you are going to be like, this chick is completely insane, and that's fine. But I'll tell you, somebody said this to me, and it really made sense. How many women orgasm and then leave, right? Or men, right? We have this intense moment of pleasure, and we can't sustain it. We don't want to cuddle. We got to get out.
Get out.
Too much, right? Intense pleasure, no more. So now start thinking about this. Well, why do I have to get up? Why can't I sit in my pleasure, right? I mean, that's one of the most wonderful heightened experiences that we can naturally have, right? So use that orgasm as like, oh, here's my opportunity to sit and stretch the bounds of my capacity to hold pleasure. And the more I have widened that, the more pleasure I have in my life.
Right.
So it's like, that's kind of what we're doing.
When we've been learning that pleasure is guilty.
Yes.
Right. It actually is considered that. Oh, this is my guilty pleasure.
Yeah. Yes.
A bowl of ice cream. You know what? If you want some Haagen-Dazs peanut butter ice cream, it's not a guilty pleasure. You fucking like it.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Right.
It's fine.
You know, I would tell my clients, even, you know, listen, if you have a craving for a chocolate bar, go get the damn chocolate bar. Take a bite of it. If it is exactly what you wanted, finish it. But if it's not, why are you doing something you don't like?
Right.
It's not giving you pleasure at the moment, just toss it. Maybe something else you needed pleasure from, right? Then that's that whole, like, we're trained to feel bad about feeling good.
Right. And I do think, so going along that line, it's like, is this actually bringing me pleasure? Or is this a tool for escape? So is it rooted in love or fear? You know, so checking in with those things as well, because, you know, the reality is when we're doing something for pleasure, it shouldn't be creating shame. When we're doing it out of repression or escape or anything else, and that shame is created, that's actually what feels bad. And that's actually what hurts us. They did all these studies with people that they would eat something they weren't supposed to on this diet, right? And they would feel terrible about it. And they gained an astronomical amount of weight than people that ate what they weren't supposed to on this diet and didn't feel bad about it. So it's like, you know, so much of it is the self like flagellation and punishment that we do to ourselves that actually causes problems and not the thing. And I mean, I'm somebody that, I don't eat a lot of sugar because I know it's bad for me. I feel like it's putting nail polish in a Ferrari. And when I do it, I don't feel bad. And if I'm like, okay, this is going to make me feel better temporarily, and the consequences, what? You know, it's pretty minimal in comparison. Like, I don't think twice about it. It's just silly. And we have made everything so serious and so problematic. It's like we're just walking around trying not to be offensive or hurt ourselves or it's like exhausting, you know? It's like
exhausting. We are exhausted. I remember when the world shut down for the pandemic, I remember looking at a Time magazine. They do like quarterly magazines, and they had a magazine there, and it was talking about the world of anxiety. And there was a whole issue about anxiety and depression and stress.
Yeah.
And it had like emojis on it showing what those all look like. And I'm thinking, even at, like, I'd say December 2019, I would be like, I just need a break. I just need a break.
Yeah.
Communally, I do believe that we spoke it as a community, and we got a freaking break.
God's like, time out.
Yeah, you guys are up with you're on the naughty step right now.
Go to your rooms.
And I know, despite people lost lives and lost business, I know it. You know, I've been in the fitness industry, so was my wife. So we were shut down.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I took a running leap off the deep end, off the diving board, and did a cannonball into it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, and I remember having a panic attack over that Christmas break with my kids. Now, my oldest was 16, and oh my God, he's 2 years, he's going to be off to university, and I'm not going to see him in all those times. I could have spent time with him, but I didn't, and I wasted it. And I was freaking out. And then 4 months later, he comes home. We had bubbled with his girlfriend at the time and their family, so because teens not being able to see each other was not going to be a good scenario. So we bubbled with them, and I remember him coming home one night at about 12 o'clock. He said, "Hey, Dad, I was about to go to bed." He says, "Hey, Dad, do you want to hang out for a bit?" And at 4 a.m, I looked at myself, I got to go to bed, man. Right? I wouldn't have had any of that.
Yeah.
If we weren't forced to stop.
Yeah.
And so I embraced all. It changed how my wife and I have the greatest relationships with our kids, like with each other. Like it takes all that, and we saw people who were together during the pandemic who slipped up with, who relapsed or whose marriages apart. Like we were forced to face the ugly, which was looking right back at us for a long period of time. But it's amazing how all that changed. Now we're here, and it's great. So let me get back to, we're a bit off tangent again. I want to respect your time. We've gone over a little bit. Let's go with this. You're now in Cabo. What are you doing? So you graduated. So tell people what you're doing and how, because you are such a light. Like, I'm so uplifted right now. I'm like, you are truly a light. And when I'm coming to Cabo, I'm going to let you know.
Absolutely.
So you've got this light about you. You've been through it all. You do help people. So how do people, if they want to reach out to you, you mentioned before about learning about your thoughts on Big Pharma, which we all have many thoughts on that.
Well, mine are right. Mine are correct.
It's one of those where now we're starting to learn things like gut, brain connectivity and all these things. And we're really starting to do the studies. I just read a book a while ago about a woman who had severe trauma, was raped when she was, I think, maybe 9 or 10, and was told by her mother, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Suffered severe Crohn's growing up.
Yes.
And when she did some therapy and a whole bunch of other things, she had done some work where she had envisioned inside of her body, not knowing that she had Crohn's yet, had envisioned what was inside of her body, and her inside was all marked up with red marks and blotches in her mind.
Yeah.
And then they started testing her, and she had Crohn's, right? And that manifested from that suppress everything,
Yeah.
right? And so it's crazy. So how do people, if we want to talk to Jo and learn from Jo and connect with you, what do you do to help people?
Awesome. Okay. So in 5 minutes, that's about how much time I have. I'm going to summarize this. One thing I do want to say really quickly, though, is just kind of even going back to COVID and how we processed that and how we showed up is I think this is really important. So Eckhart Tolle said this. He said, relationships don't cause pain and sadness. They simply expose the pain and sadness already within you. So it's kind of this idea, like if I throw apples into a juicer, I'm going to get apple juice every time. So we can look at these big life events or traumas or whatever, right? And then say that thing caused this. And it's like, no, that thing exposed what's already within you. And that is the reality. And I firmly believe that. So I think it's important that we do the work preemptively, like of what is in me. And it's getting to know what lives in me. And some of it is that intuition. And this is what I help people develop is their own capacity to know, because we have that within us. And there is this innate system that is so precious that always has our highest and greatest good, and we stop listening, we tune out. And it's like, I help people tap into the truth of this is happening for me and not to me. And how do we live that? And I hold people highly accountable for that because I believe they are worth fighting for. And so, a lot of the work I do, it may be referring people to other people. I'm a huge proponent of psychedelic therapy, like astronomically supportive of that world for certain people. Some people, not a good fit at all. There's lots of somatic practices. I do co-therapy with a lot of other practitioners that will do intense energy work, body work, EMDR, just different somatic therapy. Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. We have incredible tools. And then I work with people to help them get on psilocybin microdosing regimens if it's appropriate. So I have a really big bag of tools. And I cannot say how I would individually work with somebody because it's so tailored and detailed to their specific needs. Right. And again, I intuitively know if I'm able to support, or I have a great referral system as well. My thing, though, really is allowing people to sit in the throne of their magnificence, because I know what I have done, and I know who I have been, and I know the dark that lives in me, and the fact that I can still sit in my knowing of who and what I am, and the truth and the love that I bring and the light that I hold. And I know my shadows, and I have so much fun, dancing between those two worlds. I help people do that too. And, my thing for whoever is listening is I believe in you. Like, even if you don't, I do. There are so many of us that see you, that have been there, that have done it. And maybe this isn't your path, right? Maybe it's not. And that's okay too. And maybe it is. And so listen and seek and ask questions and get curious. Instead of wanting to control, instead of needing it to be different, get so curious. Wow, look at myself and what I am doing. Does this serve me? Why is my stomach jacked up? I mean, mine was horrible. I was hospitalized, had 5 years of the worst stomach issues ever. And then all of a sudden I move out and they mysteriously go away. Our body is going to get our attention. Dr. Gabor Mate, the body keeps the score. There's so many different people, and Tara Brock's work, all this stuff is free. Look and seek. And like I said, anybody that wants to hit me up, they can find me at joweatherford.com or Jo Weatherford. I am old school. I do a lot more on Facebook than I do Instagram. send me a message. Just be like, hey, will you send me resources? I will send you, my teachers, my mentors, my coaches, whatever, like it is always, always possible, and it is worth it. And don't sacrifice. You don't need to. You don't. You really can live the life that we are all here to live. We didn't come here to suffer. We are God living itself and getting to know itself through one another. That's why we separated into this human form. So we can eat delicious sushi on the beach, have sex, whatever. We're God getting to know itself. So, remember that.
I love that. That is so good. Love that. Jo, don't go anywhere, but I want to thank you for spending time with me today on Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal. And oh my God, you've got resilience, and wow, I love your renewal. So thank you so much, Jo. And I guess anybody who wants to reach out, all the links for Jo will be in the comment section. Jo, stick around for a second, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you so much.
You're listening to Rise Up, stories of recovery, resilience, and renewal with Matthew Tobe.